Hey guys, Luke here. Welcome back to my channel here today. Today I'm going to be giving you my review of Once Upon a Time Season 3A. Once Upon a Time Season 3A picks up right where the last season left off, where at the beginning of the season Henry is taken by Peter Pan, played by Robbie Kay, who we also find out is Rumpelstiltskin's father, and he gave his son away to two spinsters and was given immortality by the soul of Neverland, which is represented as a shadow, which are used here to show how powerful Peter Pan is, and his son uses it to checkmate his father at the end of the season. The main cast includes Michael Raymond James as Neal Cassidy, aka Balefire, and the recurring characters we follow throughout the first half of the season. Also, the main cast and characters from the first two seasons, including Emma Swan, Mary Margaret Blanchard, Regina Mills, David Nolan, and Captain Hook. They all travel to Neverland to save Henry, including Rumpelstiltskin, played by Robert Carlyle. They travel to Neverland on the Jolly Roger as seen at the end of Season 2, where Rumpelstiltskin abandons them because they believe that they aren't worthy enough to believe in themselves when they get to Neverland, because Rumpelstiltskin knows that Neverland's magic runs on belief, but believing in yourself rather than believing in anything. This is true when Henry believes that he can fly using pixie dust, which he uses to help him and Peter Pan fly away from the Lost Boys that are chasing them at the beginning of the season. Excuse me. Also, as shown here, Neal Cassidy, played by Michael Raymond James, also known as Balefire, has a much bigger role to have in Season 3A, where we find out that he was taken in by the Darling Children after he escaped from his father in the flashback that we see when he was just a kid, when he was lured away by Peter Pan with his pipe, which then lures children to him, and he then uses that magic to return back to Neverland. But then he creates a coconut map of the stars, as we can see him holding here, to get back to the land without magic, which had moved on since he'd been in Neverland, and in Neverland he didn't age, but when he went back to the land without magic, he aged like a normal person, which is why he's an adult. Also here we see that Peter Pan is played by Robbie Kay, as I mentioned earlier, and his plan is to manipulate Henry so that he can save the magic of Neverland, which I will mention later. He's a very fun boy in his own way, and he was the first Lost Boy, and he has taken Lost Boys under his wing to become his sort of like Lost Boy army. Ooh, sorry about that. And he uses his magic to great effect to trap people inside Neverland, and they can never leave if they do certain things and don't play by his rules, because he thinks that he's the leader of Neverland and the leader of everyone there. And then he tries to use his magic later on in the season to turn Storybrooke into his new Neverland, which I will mention later. Excuse me. I've got a little bit of a cough, just like when I reviewed Season 2. This is Peter Pan's right-hand Lost Boy, Felix, played by Parker Croft. He is also like Peter Pan, except he doesn't talk as much and he just does what he's told, and his heart is ripped out of his chest by Peter Pan to cast the curse to turn Storybrooke into the new Neverland, and we don't never hear from him or see from him again. He's not even mentioned in later seasons, where he was killed and obviously sent to the underworld. I assume that he was sent to a far worse place because he didn't finish his unfinished business in the underworld, which is a big part of that place during season 5A, oh no, season 5B, sorry. And yeah, here we have Tinkerbell, here played by Rose McIver. Her story is also very intertwined into the plot, as she has a history with Regina, which I will talk about later. She used to be a fairy before she lost her magic, as I will talk about later, and she uses her knowledge of the island and some cunning ways to help Emma and her family once they get Henry back to get off the island. And also, when she believes in herself, she uses her magic to free the Blue Fairy from the evil and dark magic of Peter Pan's shadow. I think she does a really good job in the role that she's given. She's not one of the main characters, but I feel like she feels like a main character even though she isn't. She adds a lot to the show with her wit and sarcasm and just out of place behavior. Anyway, also in this season we get a lot more of Mother Superior when she is also part of Tinkerbell's backstory, where she took away her magic after she used fairy magic to try and help Regina, who was still in her sort of evil queen status, or the beginning of her evil queen status, and she took away Tinkerbell's magic and her wings, but then she gave it back to her after she believed in herself when she destroyed Peter Pan's shadow when it was trapped inside the coconut, as seen in episode 11 of season 3. She also gives the dark fairy wand so that Rumpelstiltskin can swap Henry's and Peter Pan's bodies back to their original bodies, so that Henry becomes Henry again and Peter becomes Peter again. Also in the show we meet Wendy Darling, who is still a young girl, played by Freya Tingley, which is one of the most funny names that I have ever heard. Anyway, she represents the innocence of a girl who wanted to fall in love and be with Peter Pan, as we know from the classic story and animated movie and other movies that have come out over the past decades. But she is trapped in Neverland under Peter Pan's control, and Henry tries to save her by doing what Peter Pan asks him to do, which is another way of how Peter Pan manipulates people who aren't as smart or as magically gifted as he is to get them to do what he wants them to do. She also reunites with her brothers, which I will talk about in a bit. Here they are. And finally, we have John and Michael as adults, played by Matt Cain and Jason Burkhart. These two, the two younger Darling children, are actually aged up to adults, but when Peter Pan found them, he kept them from dying so that they could do his dirty work. And they tried to adopt Henry when he was a child, but they failed to do that, so that when they grew older, they were still working for Peter Pan, and they tried to get a very important magical item from Storybrooke, as seen here, which I will talk about later in the episode. They are actually very compelling characters, even though they are side characters, because you understand where they're coming from and why they're doing what they are doing, but they're doing it in such a bad way that you don't know if you can trust them or not. Also, finally, the last recurring character is Joanna Garcia Swisher as Ariel, which is one of the funniest, if not the funniest, name I've ever heard of. She also has a very compelling arc in season 3A and season 3B, which I will talk about her arc in season 3B when I talk about that season, because here she's just used as a means to get Rumpelstiltskin Pandora's box with the help of Belle, so that because she has a bracelet on her wrist that she can use to transform from a human into a mermaid, and then when she takes the wrist bracelet off, she becomes a mermaid again, and she uses that to help Belle get the box back from the Darling children, John and Michael, as adults, who took the box from them. She's a very innocent character in all of this, and she's used more like a tool. Also here, Peter Pan, this season follows a resilient Emma Swan and Regina Mills, who are trying to get their son back from the clutches of the manipulative Peter Pan, who tries to get Henry on his side, and he does by hypnosis with his pipe, which he used years ago to lure Rumpelstiltskin's son, but he rejected it, and his father whisked him away before he can tell him, so that he wishes to go to a land without magic, which is where he meets the Darling children, and he and Peter are switched as the boy who lands in Kensington Gardens, and an older Neil uses his shadow to go back to Neverland with the help of Mulan, Robin Hood, and his son to get back to where he was, just like he did when he was 11 years old. As you can see, Robin K is holding the pipe in the traditional sense, and he uses it to blow it with his lips. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Rumpelstiltskin uses his magic to get his son away from the situation, which his son didn't like, because he thinks that magic has ruined and corrupted everything, not just about his family or in his family, but the other kids around him don't want to play with his father because they think that his father is super evil. Well, he is called the Dark One, and he uses his magic to get what he wants in very maniacal, manipulative, and cunning ways. Excuse me. That's probably the sound of noise that you are doing if I would try to lure anyone into my trap, which I don't. Anyway, also another picture here is where Rumpelstiltskin is trying to find his son alongside Peter Pan, who's dressed in a very weird robe. I mean, we never see him wear this robe in later episodes of the season that he is in, including season 5B. But here, Rumpelstiltskin, as the Dark One, is trying to find his son, who is wearing a mask to mask his identity, as all the Lost Boys are, and he does this in a way to mask his true self from his father, because his father doesn't believe that his true self is what it is at the moment. He believes that his true self should be trying to help him with his duties as the Dark One, to cause chaos, havoc, death and destruction throughout the entire kingdom, which is what a lot of people believe, and it is true to some degree because they don't really know the entire history of Rumpelstiltskin as the Dark One. Also, when Balefire, young Neil Castile, lands in Kensington Gardens and meets the Darling children, he also meets their mother and their father, who decides to take him in before he finds out that they have been communicating with Peter Pan's shadow every single night, and he knows that it's evil because magic tore apart his family, and he doesn't actually tell them all the details, but it is true. And so he tries to stop the shadow from taking the Darling children away to Neverland, and he sacrifices himself and does it for them, and they don't even know if he will return or not, which he does in sort of a weird way because he's an adult and John and Michael are adults, but Wendy is a child, so when they return it's really weird. Anyway, as seen in the picture here, Robin Hood and Mulan, and Robin Hood, who's played by Sean Maguire, and Mulan, who I already told you who the actress was in season 2. I think she's played by Jamie Schwan. I think that's her name. I'm sorry if I butchered it. But anyway, they help Neil get back to Neverland by using Peter Pan's shadow, and when Roland says the phrase, I believe, which is the main phrase to summon Peter Pan's shadow, and then it doesn't initially work the first time, but then it does when the window crashes open and the shadow flies in, and Neil grabs onto the shadow and flies away to Neverland, whilst Mulan protects Roland with her flaming torch, which is a way to banish shadows away from children who don't want to go to Neverland. Also, throughout the season, we are introduced to Deathshade, a deadly plant which a younger Killian and his captain brother Liam tried to take from Neverland, but Peter saved his brother with magic water and tells him that he cannot leave here as the magic that healed him is Bounty Island. So when they leave, not listening to Peter Pan, his brother dies and Killian and his crew become pirates after they were betrayed by the king, because they believed that the plant was going to cure people in the kingdom, but it was actually going to poison their enemies. Killian, however, wanted to get revenge for his wife's death, so he made a deal with Peter Pan to give him the boy he desired, but found out it was balefire, and he went to Neverland and used a coconut compass to get back home using the stars. Meanwhile, in the main story, Emma and her family are tricked by Peter Pan until they run into Tinkerbell, who has a past with Regina, who didn't follow through with meeting Robin Hood, and because of her rebellious spirit, the Blue Fairy took away her wings and magic, so she resented Regina for what she did to her, so she doesn't decide to help them but changes her mind when they find a way back home. David is hit with the poisonous arrow and is dying, so he doesn't tell his family about it, and he and Hook go on a quest to find his brother's sextant. I don't know how it's pronounced. Sorry if I butchered that. But it was a ruse by Hook to heal his poison when they get to a cave to save Neil. David has to reveal his secret to the group, and Mary Margaret finds out that and gives him the silent treatment until they save Henry. Sorry about that. Also seen here, we find out that Captain Hook and his brother Liam were part of the King's Royal Navy before Liam tragically died, as I mentioned earlier, and Killian became a pirate, as you can see by the naval uniform that they wear. Also, in the navy uniform that they wear, they do not have stripes on their wrists, part of the naval top on their wrists, which according to Food Theory is why Captain Crunch is not actually a captain, because he is impersonating a naval officer. It's one of the funniest Food Theory videos I've ever watched. If you want to watch it, there will be a link to the Food Theory video in the description down below. Also, when Emma discovers that Neil is actually alive, Neil and Killian actually get into an argument about their love over Emma Swan, but Emma is only interested in getting Henry back, and they manage to do it when they trap Peter Pan's soul inside the coconut using a magical fire that they use to trap the shadow into it, because the shadow is attracted to the fire. Because apparently shadows attracted to fire in this universe, which is just really weird, and they never even explain it. So sorry guys, I'm super tired. I'm just checking my notifications. According to BBC Sport, Jurgen Klopp has received a 2-match ban for arguing with referees. Anyway, as mentioned earlier, Regina and Ariel had a past together where Regina sought out Ariel's help when she wished that she could I guess, have another lover after Daniel's tragic demise in her earlier um, in her earlier years. Excuse me. So Regina and Tinkerbell go on sort of like a love quest, so that um, Tinkerbell uses a spell to find Regina's one true love. But actually, we find out in a later season that Robin Hood was not Regina's one true love, but the evil queen's one true love. After Regina battles her darker self, and there's this whole symbolism battle going on. It's actually really cool. I will actually talk about that in season 5 and season 6. Anyway, as represented here, Killian Jones uses the magical waters of Neverland to heal David Nolan's poison, but apparently he tells David that he cannot leave the island. However, Rumpelstiltskin has a cure for it, because of course he does. He's like one of the most powerfully magical beings throughout the entire universe. And when David Nolan finds out that Killian tricked him into saying that they were going to find his brother's sextant, he gets mad, but then Hook brings him back to normality, where he tells him that wouldn't you rather want to stay alive and have your final few moments with your family, trying to get them reunited before they can go home? And he's like, yeah, that does actually make sense. Thanks for doing that. Anyway, here's the cave that I mentioned, where everyone had to reveal their secret to everyone in the group. And it's actually very touching, but also very weird, because I didn't really know that this was going to even be a part of the of season 3A when I first watched this episode. I mean, it does make sense symbolically, I guess, but apart from that, it's just used as a mechanism for the group to get from point A to point B. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, if you don't have any dark secrets, then how are you supposed to get from point A to point B? And if you do and you forgot about them, then how is that even possible? I mean, do you just use a rope? I don't know, but apparently everyone in this group has a dark secret that they have been keeping to themselves until the point where they have to reveal it, as you can see here. And this is probably one of the most touching secrets. That it's not actually a dark secret, it's more like the most lovely and kind and loving secrets that Neil and Emma have been holding on and never revealed until this moment, because they thought that it would just make their relationship awkward, I guess, but they never said it out loud to each other. And to hear them say it out loud in this moment was just extremely moving, and I absolutely adored and loved every moment of it. I applaud the writers and creators of this show for actually doing this. It was amazing. They put their heart and soul into that one moment, and if I ever make a top 10 Once Upon a Time moments, I'm putting that in there as top 5. I don't even care. I don't give a damn. That is what I'm going to do. Top 5 at least. I'd probably put it in 5th or 4th, because my top 3 would just be way more epic. But maybe a top 10 list of the most moving and heartfelt moments of Once Upon a Time throughout from seasons 1 to season 7. That would actually be a lot more easier to do, because then it would probably be top 3 at the most. Anyway, after Emma and Neil hug it out, after Emma frees Neil from the, I guess, magical Cave, we have a few episodes until we actually get to this one, which I was going to mention earlier. In a flashback, we find out how Regina looked after Henry for the first few weeks and how hard it was going for her, and she was going to actually give him away, but she changed her mind, and the family trying to get to him was the Darling family, being kept alive by Peter Pan's magic in an earlier episode. This is actually one of the most touching and moving parts of season 3A, and it actually does make a lot of sense because it's actually very close to real life, although Regina and Henry's relationship is a bit like, back and forth throughout from ages 1 to 11, but from ages 12 to 13, Henry and his mum actually have a very close relationship. Anyway, moving on. This box here is called Pandora's box, which is what the Rumpelstiltskin tries to trap his father in, but he fails because Rumpelstiltskin had a fake Pandora's box that was magically given to him by his father, even though they never explain how he can do it. I guess he's just more magically powerful than his son. But anyway, he uses his box to trap his son in, but then they get his son out when they use the Dark One dagger to do it, I think. I don't know. Anyway, so they actually managed to get Rumpelstiltskin out of the box using the Dark One dagger, and then they use it to trap Peter Pan in. And also, it's seen in the picture here, he was actually trapped earlier in the season using squid ink, because squid ink is one of the most powerful magical items that you can use to immobilize a magical, I guess non-magical being for a few minutes, as seen here, and you actually glow purple when it happens to you. I don't know why, I guess. I mean, maybe you glow purple based on the magic that you represented when you transport from somewhere to somewhere, so it will be purple for the Rumpelstiltskins because theirs is purple, I think. Or no, that wouldn't actually make any sense because it would be red. They when they transport from point A to point B, their transportation dust, or I think it's dust, I'm not sure, it turns red. Also, we found out in an earlier episode that Balefire was actually tutored by Captain Hook in the ways of this sea on the Jolly Roger, as we see him here standing and talking to Captain Hook, aka Killian Jones, who teaches him about port and starboard and using a wheel to steer a ship, which is how Neil can actually steer the Jolly Roger at the end of the season. This is also one of the most touching and also heartbreaking parts of the season, because he finds out that Captain Hook had a relationship with his mother, but then he tells him that Rumpelstiltskin, aka his father, actually killed his mother in front of him and then gave him the one hand, and that's why he calls himself Captain Hook, because he replaced his hand with a hook. It's all very tragic and moving, but apart from that, it is actually an episode that allows the plot to move forward. Anyway, also here, this is Skull Rock, where the place where Peter Pan replaces his heart with Henry's heart to try and become more immortal, and so that he can kill Henry. He's using it actually as a way to bring Neverland's magic back from the brink of collapse to become way more powerful than it could ever be by using Henry's heart. This is actually one of the most simple yet complicated schemes, because he has to go through all that trouble just to say to Henry, oh yeah, can I have your heart so you can save Neverland? And he, like at the beginning of the season, why didn't you just say to Henry, oh yeah, we're going to go to Skull Rock now. go and talk to this girl for a minute, and then come back to me, and then we'll go to Skull Rock, and then try and save the magic of Neverland. It doesn't really make any sense. But also here, when Peter Pan and Henry swap bodies, Peter Pan accidentally traps Henry inside Pandora's box as Peter Pan, not Peter Pan as Henry, because he didn't know what happened, because he was standing behind him and he didn't see the shadow, because only the person who has the shadow can see the shadow. I know it's very weird, but I guess that's not even true, because people with the shadow, without people who can actually see the shadow that isn't their shadow because it's flying around, it's very visible, so I don't even know how we cannot see the shadow in this moment. It makes no goddamn sense. Rant over. Maybe. Anyway, so in this season, in the later 2 episodes, Emma tries to kill her son inside Peter Pan's body, but then she gets shaken off by it because she asks Henry one important question. Where were we the day where we connected, not met? And why did I give you up? What was the reason for it? And he said, because you wanted to give me my best chance. And that, I think, is probably like the second most moving moment of Once Upon a Time season 1 to 7 throughout the entire show. That's probably number 2. I don't know what number 1 would be. I think number 1 would be Hook proposing to Emma Swan. I think the marriage is great, don't get me wrong, it's very grand, but I think Hook proposing to Emma Swan properly would be it. Also in this episode, as mentioned earlier, Tinkerbell finally believes in herself and uses the pixie dust around her neck in a glass cylinder, I believe, to fly to the shadow with the coconut on fire, which she also used her magic to light up, and then trap the shadow inside the coconut and then throw that coconut into the fire, where the Blue Fairy, aka Mother Superior, would wake up because the shadow was destroyed, and that's what led to her shadow being taken out of her. That's why she became unconscious, and her shadow was returned to her after Pan's shadow was destroyed. Phew, we got all that because it's very complicated and very convoluted. Also, throughout the season, Rumpelstiltskin finally comes to the conclusion that he cannot evade death. The prophecy in the earlier parts of the season said that this boy would be your downfall. He thinks that it would be Henry, but no, it's his father, because his father actually looks like a boy. So he's like, screw it, my father's going to be my downfall. I'm going to use the Darkwind dagger given to me by my shadow, because I gave the dagger to my shadow at the midway point of season 3A, and then I will use this dagger to kill my father, which will then inadvertently kill me, because I'm going to sacrifice myself for the people that I love, because that's what a true hero does. Anyway, after that, the people that Peter Pan had used his magic to freeze get unfrozen, and they all mourn Rumpelstiltskin's death in different ways. I mean, Emma and her family mourn differently because they didn't really know him or grow up with him, or they just tolerated him. Belle and Neil feel really sad, Belle especially, and then after Regina had a vision and all that is over, she tells that to stop Peter Pan's curse, she has to give up the thing that she loves most, which we all know throughout the entire of the show leading up to this moment is Henry. She loves him the most. I don't know how it is the other way around. I think Henry loves her to a certain degree, but Regina really loves her son and will do anything for him. So she tells Emma that she will give them new false memories. They will never even know what Storybrooke was or their adventures up until this point. And then, as soon as Peter Pan's curse hits, Regina tells Emma to get into her car and drive away from here, because that will then allow their family and friends to be transported back to where they were before Regina's curse hit at the beginning of the first season. This is one of also the most moving and heart-wrenching part of season 3. Oh, sorry, I just couldn't contain myself. Very sad. Oh. Anyway, then they use it to get away from the curse by going away from Storybrooke, which they didn't even know existed until Season 3B. Season 3A had a tough time to balance the look of Neverland, 20th century London and Storybrooke, but the special effects done by Rob Price, Andrew Olof, Ravinder Brar, Remy Laraveri, Kevin Struckman, Robert Sevengross, Jonathan S. Smith, Matt Drake, Matthias Lary and Dale Fay have done a wonderful job of bringing the magic, worlds and production value to the entire show. There are more people coming for later seasons, so if you want to give them credit to them, then Google Once Upon a Time Visual Effects and go to the IMDb tab to see the others and the great work they've done too. I think that Season 3A does a great job of bringing the drama, magic, simple but fun stories, characters and their arcs, and twists in the tale to make Season 3A one of the best stories of the show so far. I will give Season 3A an 8.5 out of 10. When I review Season 3B, I will give that one a grade out of 10 too, and then average the two scores out of 20 to give an overall season score at the end, basically a percentage. I will do that from seasons 3 to 5 and then use the overall scores to rank them with the other seasons. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe and share the video, and I'll be back with more reviews of the show soon. Also, the top comments from this video will be mentioned in the next video, so don't forget to comment something funny. Thanks for watching and bye.